Hi there, my name is Grete Reppen and I started weaving in 1973. I'm also a member of the Hudson Mohawk Weavers Guild, and I have been a member there since the early 1980s. I was the program chair for 4 years and then president for 2 years in about mid-1990s to the late 1990s. I'm also a member of the Arachne Weavers, which is a small local group, and I've been there since 1979. And I'm a member of the international group called Complex Weavers, where I also was a member of the Fine Thread Study Group for 13 years. So I'll show some of my weavings. So I'm showing you here some of the things I have woven. These are scarves or cowls. This is the one I'm wearing, and these two were woven on the same warp, so the tricolor warp again. And you can see the difference you get by using different wefts, that is yarn, in the shuttles. And then I have, just to show you some of my fine thread weavings. This is my finest ever, and that's I consider it my treasure. And then I have a couple of others that are very fine silk as well, and one is quite simple in pattern, this one is more complex. It has borders, and I can do that because I have many shafts, at least on a couple of looms. I started with tapestry weaving small tapestries. Then I continued with a 4-shaft floor loom counterbalance. Then I continued with a 10-shaft countermarch grimåkra. And now I have 2 computer-assisted looms from AVL, one with 16 shafts and one with 40 shafts. That's the newest one. Since I have mentioned shafts, let me show you the shafts and the heddles which are on the shafts on my loom. So these are the shafts. Each of these, what I call a frame, they have a wooden piece on the top and the bottom, and they're hung inside the loom. And this one has 40 of these, which is a lot. And on each shaft there are these, I have strings, you can call them. They're either polyester or nylon, I can't remember. Some looms also have metal ones. And these have a hole in the middle. You might not see it, but there's a hole where the warp threads are threaded through. So they are done in a certain order according to my threading draft. So this is the hole. You can see the thread is moving up, again moving it up and down so you can see where it is. It's also called the eye of the heddle. I'm now sitting down by my computer where I do most of my designing. And the question that most non-weavers ask me is, how long did it take you to weave or make that? And I think most people think about the time it has taken me to throw the shuttle, not understanding that there's a lot of prepping to do before I can start the actual weaving. I will be setting up a fairly complex technique of 4-color double weave on 32 shafts with a 3-color warp, but simpler weave structures use the same basic process. And the tasks are the following: planning, winding the warp, transferring the warp to the loom and winding it on the warp beam, threading the warp, slaying it, and tying it to the front. And then I can start on the fun part. Let us say that I have decided to make a scarf, which happens quite often. Then what? I need to make up my mind what fiber and colors to use, of course, and the size of the scarf, and many, many more details. Then I have to pick a weaving technique or structure. And because I have so many shafts on this loom, there are a lot of possibilities. When I have decided on the technique, I need to create a draft, which is a pattern or recipe for the weavers. I use a software program called Fiberworks PCW, created by Bob Keats and his wife Ingrid Bosell, who passed away a few years ago. And I use it both for running my loom, that is, I use the software for running my loom, and for creating my draft. And it makes it easy to try out different threadings, lift plans, and color combinations. It can take quite a few hours of computer work to arrive at a satisfactory result, especially for a multi-shaft structure. So this is the draft. So this is a draft on my computer, and this part is the threading of the shafts. This part is a lift plan that shows how the various shafts are lifted each time I tap on a treadle, only one. And this part is the finished cloth as I'm weaving. Each line here is a shaft, which means that this gray is just a start, so that's why it's gray. Is a thread that is threaded through shaft 1. And up there, I think that was shaft 17, and the next one 18. And then you go down to shaft 2, and then that was probably 18, and then 17. On my printout of this threading, I have the numbers there, so I'll know. I don't have to guess. I guess what it is while I'm threading. On the computer-assisted loom, or Doby loom, which this is, the one I have with the 40 shafts, is we have a lift plan, and this is the lift plan down here. And each line is what is called a lag or a pick. A pick is one throw of the shuttle. The black squares represent a shaft that's supposed to be picked up or lifted. So then you get an opening, which is called the shed, and that's where you throw your shuttle. The computer moves down the lift plan, one line at a time, reads the line, and tells the compu-doby, which is on the side of the loom, which shafts are to be lifted. So it keeps on going down, and I only have to press or tap on one treadle. Okay, so now that I have done most of my planning and decision making, I can start on my warp, wind my warp. This is the warping board, and I can wind up to 8 yards of warp on this one. It's this is just going to be a sample warp. This is not going to be the one I'm taking upstairs to put on my loom. I already have taken that warp upstairs. So here we go. I'm using 2 threads because that way it will take only half the time to wind it on. And I go over this peg and under this peg, and I'll explain why when I come back up. And also at the bottom, the other end of the warp. So that was one 1 yard, 2 yards, 3 yards, and then probably more like 4.5 yards. So now we are coming to the other end of the warp, and I do go over that peg, under that peg, over this peg and around, and then I don't go over again, I go under and then over this peg to make a cross here. This way the warp threads stay in order. That's one way of keeping them in order. And I always have a cross in each end of my warp. So here we go back again, another 4.5 yards. And now you see this here, the warp thread went over and under the peg. Now I go over and under, and then I get across here. And it makes the threads stay apart, or they don't get messed up. And then I keep on doing that. And now I go another 4.5 yards down to the other end, make the cross, and I go up, and again I go over and under instead of under and over. Now I go over and under that way. So now I have 4 times 4.5 yards. I'll do 2 more just for the sample warp. On the bottom again, under, over, and then I go under the one I went over and over the one I went under to make the cross. And then I get to the top, and if I were doing the section for my sectional warp beam upstairs, I would need 36 threads, and that means I would have to do this 18 times. And but I'm not, this is just, like I said, a sample warp. Now I am going to cut this off, and I wind it around a few times so it won't slide off. Here I cut. And I just take these 2 of these, go like that, and then I tie it off, double tie so it won't slide, and then another thread, and then I cut that off. Then I have to remove this onto the loom, and this behind here is a guide. I forgot to say, this is a guide string, the pink. It shows me the path I have to wind the warp, so I get the 4.5 yard, or I would do a different path for it if we were to do 6 yards or 8 yards. So before I take it off, I have to put in ties so it won't get all messed up. And first across, and this is I believe this is a Swedish method that I learned from, actually I saw Becky Arsenden of Vävstuga do this, and also do it at the other end of the warp, where there's also a cross. There's a square knot there. Then I do each end, so I have keeps it in place. And up here, another square knot, and I have to do what we call to keep it from getting undone. Also, I do in this case I probably just do one here and one there, these two places, so it will stay in place. And this one I do with a double twist there, kind of double tie, and then another one the same way. So I have, I'm sure this is, so I'm sure that the warp threads won't move around. And this is called a surgeon's knot. And then I do one here, similar, but that's not so important, just to keep it together. Okay, so now it's wound on and I have tied off so that it will not get messed up when I take it off. And I'm going to take it off the board, the warping board, I start down here and I put my hand through here and then I pull it through, make a chain, and I do it with every other hand, and that's so that it will not twist. It's important that the warp doesn't twist. If you have a twisted warp on your loom, you'll have some problems. And if you wonder how I know that, you can make a guess. So here we are getting to the end. And it's very loosely done because I'm just gonna take it upstairs. Well, I usually just take it upstairs to my loom. And there we are. This is a warp and I can take it upstairs. Although I will not take this one upstairs, but this is just to show you how it's done. Okay. Hi there. This is my loom, my 40 shaft computer assisted loom from AVL. I had some problems with it in the beginning, but now it seems to be maybe used to me or whatever it is, but it's a pretty good loom. So this is the back side of the loom where I have the sectional warping beam, and I'm going to show how to put the one section on. So now we are upstairs, 2 staircases up, and at my loom that I have already put on 8 of the 10 sections of warp. And this is a sectional beam, and you can do 1-inch sections or you can do 2-inch sections. I decided to do 1-inch sections for this. Not totally sure why, but that's what I did. And I have a warp chain here that I have 2 more to put on to make the 10-inch wide. So there it is. This is the one I have done already, and it's just to undo it. Let it go. I make an overhand knot at the end or the beginning. And I have this thread here, it's a linen thread that extends it a bit, so it's a way of saving warp. And I put the knot here that I made, the overhand knot, into this. I think this is called something like a lark's head knot or a lark's head. I put it in here into that opening, and then when I pull, it gets tight, and the knot prevents it from sliding out. there. Then I start winding it on just a bit first. And this is the cross. This is what keeps the threads in order. This is, you can see why it's so important. We have a cross here. And I know on one side it's like this, and the other side there is a cross. And it happens the way this was wound on. The colors are green, brown, purple in that order. Green, brown, purple, green, brown, purple. And it's very important for this particular technique that I have that in order. So here, this is a rattle down here. And it's, each inch has 4 spaces. And so I have to wind this up so I get the cross in a little bit of the back of that. And then I have to put in the lease sticks. The lease sticks, oh boy, getting stuck here. The lease sticks going to replace this tie, and that's important that I just right where the ties go. So then I know I have everything in order. Then the other side of the cross. And then of course, it has to be there. But it's there. Then I cut off the tie, because now I have the lease sticks there to hold it in place. And this is, you have to be very careful so you don't cut your warp. Oh. I pull out the tie, and then the threads have to be put into these spaces in the order. So with 36 threads, I have to divide them evenly, or try as, depending on how many threads you have, you try to do it as evenly as you can. In this case, 36 divided by 4 equals 9. So I have to then pick out 9 threads. And that should be 9 there. And I can see that also, double check that I have 4 on the top and I have 5 on the bottom. I can see that, you can't see that on the video, but there are 9. And then I put them into that space, the 1/4 inch space, and move this over so they won't come out. So I managed to get these then placed in the 4 spaces, the 4 1/4 inch spaces. And I pull this all the way over. You can see there is the warp puddled on the bottom here, on the floor. And now I can take out the lease sticks. That means I don't have a cross here anymore. It makes it easier to wind on the warp for me. I do a lot of silk, and if I keep the lease sticks in there, that many people do, it tends to get snagged on the lease sticks, and I have just stopped doing it. That's why I have a cross in the other end. So I take it out. Of course, now it's stuck there. Pull them out. There. And then I used to have weights in the end of this warp. Now I just hold it on tightly with my hand. I put it around my hand twice, like this, so I have a good grip. And then I wind, and I don't let it slide, because then you don't know, the tension can be very uneven. So I wind it on so it goes into that. And I move my hand back and do the same thing, keep it there. And here, I loosen up a little bit so I can put the knot in the back so it won't create some tension problems. And then I come to one of my ties. This one has 3 ties, I believe. One of the ties. I have to cut it off. And that again, you have to be very careful so you don't cut the warp itself. I have done it a couple of times, fortunately with not too much trouble. So I keep on doing this till I got all the 6 yards off. So cutting another tie off, carefully, very carefully. And then I am winding on some more, the rest. Winding on very tightly till I get to the cross. And this is why it's good to have a tie here, so I know exactly where the warp, where this loop is, so I can hold on to it. And move this over, and I take this up over one of the section dividers, and I pin it in here, just so it stays in place and out of the way of the next and the last section I'll be winding on. So this you have to do. For this one I had to do this 10 times. Others, if you want a wider thing, like a shawl or a blanket, you would have to do several more. So that's it. So here we are the next day. Now I have all my sections wound on to the sectional beam in the back here, and I have taken out all the pins I pinned each section to, so just to keep them in place. So now I'll take all of them, loosen them off. Oops. Okay. There are 10 of them. Oh, that was one I had not taken out. And 9 and 10. Now I will be putting the leaf sticks through all these crosses. And you have to put it up like that. And what's very important here is that they are all straight, not twisted. This one is a bit twisted. So they all should have this side of the tie up, not the one where the cross is in the tie, the cross in it. I've done one, and have to find the opening here, so I do it the right place. This is a cross again that I have tied. I tied in there when I was doing the winding in the basement, and like I said, this should not be twisted. You don't want your warp to be twisted for many reasons. And I will be doing all of these. Okay, there I am. Then I have to get this under. I have to go under this roller. That's important. Here. And I need to tie this on so I don't doesn't slip out from here. And I have some like a cradle. I put these sticks in to keep them in place. Okay, so I've done one side. So we are now one step closer to the threading. Now here I have the warp in the lead sticks, also with the ties on, and they are hanging in what you could call a cradle. There are two cords tied to the loom, to the upper part of the loom, and they are in the position where the eyes of the heddles are, so it's easier to thread this way. So I have moved the warp sections in place, so it's more or less straight from the back to the front, and I cut off the tie for the cross, because now of course they are in the these sticks. That's keeping them in place, and I do see the colors are correct. There comes green, brown, purple, green, brown, purple is the order, and I will cut this open so it can be threaded through the heddles. And I have to tell you too about this. This is a shaft, this frame, I call it a frame, and these are the heddles. I did pick out, I counted all my heddles yesterday. It took me about an hour to get all of these in place, the correct number. So that's all ready to be threaded. So I have to thread all these threads through all these heddles before I can start weaving. And I have down here I have taped on my threading draft, and I have marked off 12 and 12 threads along here. So what I do, I pick up the 12 heddles that are going to be threaded, and then I do take off like 9, 12 threads here that are going to be threaded. I put this on the side, and then when I have done threaded all these, and then I have also used up those 12 heddles, I know at least I should be correct. The threading should be correct. So I'll have to pick out the heddles. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, and they are colored. So on shaft 1 they are red, number 2 they are white, no color, number 3 is supposedly blue, and the 4th is green. And that I have that repeat 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way through up to the 48th shaft. So this one I need 4, these 4, then I need 3, 7 on the 17th shaft. Okay, yes, and there was also one on the 16th. And then 2 on the 18th. And I have numbers written down here on my shafts to help me. Okay, so now I finally start threading. Not throwing the shuttle yet, but I threading. And I have picked out the 3 first heddles from this group of 12 heddles I put over here. And I have 3 of the warp threads. And these are then in the order. So green, and this is according to my draft here. Green goes in the heddle on shaft. Well, it was supposed to. Heddle on shaft 1. And they have to, and then this is number 17. That's where the brown one goes. And 18, that's where the purple goes. So there I have done 3. And I put them a little bit to the side. They're not straight back, but this is so they stay out a little bit out of the way. I usually don't do an overhand knot here, but I do just to keep it in order. So the next 3 heddles are on shaft 2, 18 and 17. So that is 2. And the next one would be 18. And then there's 1, 17. And I have to pick up the next 3 threads, green, brown, purple. And I put my finger to so it's easier. So the first one was on heddle was on shaft 2, that's a green. And then there is 18, that's the brown. And then 17, the purple. And on we go. I have now almost finished my threading, and it took me close to 5 hours, mainly because it's a very complex threading pattern. And now I'm going to do just the last few threads, and I have 6 threads left, and I have 6 heddles left, and that's a good sign. It should mean that I don't have made too many, or I shouldn't have made any mistakes. So the last, let's see now, will be then 5, 21 and 14 according to my chart here. So 5, this is shaft number 21 and shaft number 14. And then the last 3 should be 4, 20 and 13. Fingers through there. Here we go. 4, 20 and shaft, the final one, 13. Then this is the 10th inch. Straighten them out a bit. And the next step is to slay the warp threads through the reed. And when I have put in my beater with a reed in it, I'll show you what those things are. So this is the beater, and it's holding the reed in place. This is a reed here. So this is the reed, and it has 12 openings per inch. So it is a 12 dent reed. And with this, since I have 36 threads or ends per inch, I will divide that by 12. That means I will get 3 threads in each dent. And that is also makes it easier to thread for me because I have the 3 colors. So when I have 3 colors, I can pick out the 3 colors here and then pull it through the dent. This is a slaying hook. So this process is called slaying. So the middle, well, this is 10 inches wide. So the middle then, and onto the side is 5. I have a middle marker here. And then over to the side is 5 inches. So this is where I start. And now I have 3 threads here, and I pull them through with a hook. And then I have to do this. And I do other 3. And this is faster than the threading because I don't have to figure out the exact shaft it goes on. It just goes through a dent. And when I have done, this is 36 ends, and that's an inch worth of warp. And so when I have finished this, oops, I will just tie an overhand knot in the front here and then continue with the rest. And that should not take me 5 hours. It should probably take me more like maybe an hour. So here you can see that the warp has been lashed to the apron, which is a piece of canvas that goes from the cloth beam at the bottom in the back of the loom through the loom and up to the front, which is where the breast beam is located. You can see it here. That's a breast beam that the canvas goes around. I have started weaving some color samples, various yarns, same yarn that is in my warp. And you can see here, right now I'm doing, or finished doing these 2 colors, and then I will try a couple of other colors after that. I have those 2 sticks in the front to even out, spread out the warp. I also use some thin strips of fabric or cord in addition to that. But since I knew I was just doing some samples, I started weaving after I put in the sticks. Now that I have finished all those tasks, I can finally start on the fun part, throwing my shuttle. Or in this case, I'm throwing 2 shuttles, and the yarn that is in the shuttle is a weft that will be crossing the warp. And I have my computer all fired up so it can give the messages of the pattern, how to weave the pattern, to the compu-doby, which is up here, and it tells the loom by the treadle, via the treadle, which shafts to lift. This is the shed. And these are all the threads that are on the shafts that have been lifted. When I press the treadle, a new set of shafts comes up. And I beat it in place with a beater. This is the second pick I'm weaving right now. And I press the treadle again, and another set of shafts are lifted. I'm weaving with 2 shuttles because I'm weaving it as a double V, and each layer has its different, its own color, the green and the blue in this case. I can see how the cloth that's being woven is growing fairly slowly, but it's not too bad.